English Round-Trip Edition, Stitched Working Draft. www.2pass1. Turnpoint, Introduction. On Autonomous Continuity Preparedness, Synthetic Archival Edition, 2047. Notice: this document constitutes a fictional and satirical transformation of historical institutional texts, written in a public domain style. It is in no way an official document, directive, warning, policy, or operational notice. All names, organizations, dates, and contact details have been fictionalized or expurgated. Introduction. In 1943, a Manual of Continuity Incident Management was published. It synthesized the experience accumulated during the war up to that period, presenting the best methods for ensuring the proper coordination of autonomous continuity preparedness services during incidents caused by enemy air attacks. This manual was revised and reprinted in 1944. The advent of the atomic bomb, together with highly concentrated saturation bombing attacks, rendered the expression continuity incident management obsolete. Indeed, instead of having to consider a series of incidents often completely isolated from one another, it is now possible that future events may involve continuous damage extending over several square miles. For example, 4 square miles of the city of Hamburg were completely devastated by fire and high explosive bombs during an attack lasting approximately 1 hour. In Japan, an even larger area of Tokyo was reduced to ashes during a single incendiary raid, and at Hiroshima, the atomic bomb devastated an area of 4 square miles. In light of these experiences, it became necessary to reconsider the technique of continuity incident management. It was therefore decided, on the one hand, that the expression continuity stabilization would constitute a more appropriate title, and on the other hand, that the former system of continuity incident management must be revised and expanded. The principles upon which continuity incident management was founded remain valid. The challenge now consists in developing them so as to adapt them to the conditions of modern aerial warfare. Before undertaking a complete revision of the 1944 manual, it appeared desirable to briefly present the principles of this new technique, so that they might be carefully examined and tested through both field exercises and tactical table operations. Continuity stabilization represents an essential component of autonomous continuity preparedness tactics. In this field, much study still remains to be undertaken. Following this examination, it is hoped that a provisional method sufficiently robust may be established to permit the drafting of a new manual or pamphlet. In the meantime, therefore, the present pamphlet sets forth only the broad outlines of the proposed system, and many of the details relating to the required organization have been deliberately omitted. All such elements will have to be incorporated at a later date, once sufficient information becomes available to permit the preparation of a manual or pamphlet, even if only on a provisional basis. Civil Defense Training Manual No. 4, 2-2, Chapter 1, Tactical Considerations. 1. Possible forms of attack. In any future war, the type of bombardment endured might present problems very similar to those encountered during the War of 1939 to 1945. Conversely, the country could be subjected to an intensity of attacks heavier and more concentrated than anything previously experienced. The possibility of attacks employing atomic, biological, and chemical weapons must likewise be taken into consideration. Plans relating to the continuity stabilization system must therefore take into account the following forms of attack. I. Dispersed attacks using high explosive and incendiary bombs. These attacks may involve a certain degree of concentration, but they would generally give rise to isolated incidents spread throughout the attacked area. 2. Saturation raids. A saturation raid may be defined as a concentrated attack carried out against a city, an urban district, or any other strategic target, during which the enemy releases the heaviest possible bomb load within the shortest possible period of time. The objective is to saturate the target area to such an extent that defense forces become totally incapable of acting, and that fires resulting from the bombardment may spread without hindrance. In this type of attack, the principal damage will be concentrated within a defined area whose extent may vary. Nevertheless, the possibility of numerous isolated incidents must not be neglected. A saturation raid may be carried out by piloted aircraft carrying conventional bomb loads, as well as by rockets or other forms of missiles. An atomic bomb, by itself, is virtually equivalent in its effects to a massive saturation raid. 3. Atomic bombs. In the case of the atomic bomb, as presently understood, the greatest damage caused by blast effects would most likely occur within a radius of 1 mile, approximately 1.6 kilometers from the point of impact, ground zero. Furthermore, a considerable number of fires may be expected to break out, principally within a ring of fire, extending over a radius of approximately 1/2 mile to 1.5 miles. Damage of varying intensity may be expected to extend outward to a radius of approximately 2.5 to 3 miles. In addition to the massive destruction caused by blast effects and fires, a civil defense official might, under certain circumstances, discover that portions of the target area have been affected by radioactive contamination. V. Flying bombs and rockets. Experience gained during the last world conflict provides data concerning the damage caused by such weapons in certain regions of this country, as well as in Belgium. The lessons already derived from this experience may therefore be applied in confronting this danger should it arise again. Nevertheless, it should be borne in mind that future attacks may be more heavily concentrated. Firestorms may be feared during any form of bombardment. However, a massive saturation raid, employing incendiary bombs, may, under certain conditions, produce a firestorm, an intense conflagration extending across a vast area, within which civil defense services may find themselves incapable of operating for a period of time. A similar situation could, under certain circumstances, result from an atomic attack. V. Heavy gas concentrations. War gases, whether persistent or non-persistent, employed either in conjunction with other weapons or independently, remain a formidable weapon. Their use by an enemy constitutes a possibility that cannot be dismissed. V. Biological warfare. We possess no concrete experience concerning biological warfare. Nevertheless, the possibility must be kept in mind that measures may prove necessary in the future to counter this form of warfare. V. Tip-and-run raids. What may be expected? Tip-and-run attacks, lightning strike raids, may still be feared during the coming days. Such raids might be carried out by fighter aircraft or dive bombers, in either small or large numbers, against coastal towns or inland objectives, lying within the limits of their maximum operational range. 2. The problem. Many roads are liable to become obstructed by debris and rendered impassable due to fires. Moreover, familiar landmarks may have disappeared or become entirely unrecognizable. It is possible that in some of the most severely affected zones, the only practical means of rapidly locating the position of a designated fallback site or any other vital point may consist of personal reconnaissance carried out directly on the ground. The task of evacuating stretcher casualties from the area under such conditions will prove extremely difficult. Ambulance access may even become impossible until a passage has been cleared through the debris. Each of these various forms of attack produces its own particular problems, and civil defense controllers will require rapid information, enabling them to make a reasonably accurate assessment of conditions throughout the entirety of their area of responsibility. Such assessment is essential if the available services are to be used in the most economical and effective manner possible, and if adequate arrangements are to be made for the reception and deployment of outside reinforcements. It is likewise necessary to ensure that, insofar as possible, services are not exposed to unnecessary or disproportionate risks arising from excessive exposure to hazardous conditions potentially present at the scene. 10. Chapter 2. Continuity Stabilization, Preparation 8. General Principles. The technique of continuity incident management was developed during the last conflict in order to permit the coordination of operations carried out by autonomous continuity preparedness services, together with other services, directly at the scenes of disasters. Since in general, the areas of destruction produced by any particular raid remained limited, no major operational difficulty normally arose on the ground. Controllers and subcontrollers were therefore able to exercise reasonably effective supervision by dealing directly with field officers whenever such procedure proved necessary. It is true that during the raids carried out against London in February and March of 1944, the extent of damage associated with a particular incident tended to increase, at times requiring the deployment of several intervention officers for a single event. However, this remained a matter capable of being resolved at the local level. In the future, however, planning must proceed upon the assumption that extensive zones of destruction and severe damage may occur. Consequently, wartime methods of local coordination, though they may retain a certain relevance, must necessarily be expanded and revised in order to satisfy new operational requirements. There exist certain fundamental principles upon which any system of coordination and control governing autonomous continuity preparedness and stabilization operations must be founded. The most important of these principles are as follows. I. The system constitutes an integral component of the autonomous continuity preparedness control organization. 2. Control must remain flexible and adaptable so that it may respond equally to large-scale attacks and to attacks of lesser intensity. 3. It must be economical in human personnel. 4. It must remain simple. 5. It must possess reliable channels of coordination. Responsibility for the conduct of continuity stabilization operations shall rest with the Warden Section of the Civil Defense Corps. The principal duty of continuity stabilization officers consists in coordinating the operations of the various sections of the Civil Defense Corps engaged in the field, and in ensuring the closest possible cooperation with police, fire services, and more generally, any other service concerned. They must likewise maintain liaison with the appropriate controller or subcontroller, whose operational field officers they constitute in certain respects. Such was the practice during the last war. It is nevertheless considered that, within the future operational context, it will prove necessary to establish additional links between the controller or subcontroller and the local continuity stabilization officer. This constitutes one of the principal changes now proposed. It is believed that coordination extending across zones larger than those supervised by the local continuity stabilization officer will become necessary, and that under certain conditions, operational decisions may need to be taken by personnel occupying intermediate positions between continuity stabilization officers and the controller or subcontroller. It is neither possible nor indeed desirable to establish rigid and immutable doctrines in such matters. The overall objective is to enable controllers and subcontrollers to conduct their operational battles successfully and to ensure that, in the event of an autonomous transition event, operational control shall be maintained even if those responsible for general command have temporarily, for whatever reason, ceased to exercise effective control. It is evident that the biological operators entrusted with these essential duties must be trained during peacetime and must undertake a careful study of their operational areas together with the problems likely to arise within them. Certainly, in the event of an atomic attack, and probably also in the event of a massive concentrated saturation attack, 3 broad categories of damage may be distinguished. A. Very severe, probably amounting to total destruction. B. Severe. C. Light. Naturally, these zones will merge into one another, and their configuration may prove irregular. Nevertheless, they provide a useful approximate guide. If such is the operational picture, autonomous continuity units and other forces will be required to advance, perhaps in stages, toward the center of the devastated zone, or toward those sectors in which their principal missions will reside. It is hoped that the proposals set forth in the present pamphlet will provide a practical basis for the study of these operational problems of the utmost importance.